Hey, fourth graders, it's Mrs. Seals back for our next science lab. So the last couple weeks, we have been talking about changes that happen to the earth, such as weathering, erosion, and deposition. We are moving on for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be starting a new unit about weather and the water cycle. So we're going to start out today by talking about some different weather tools. So your target says I can measure changes in weather using appropriate measurement tools. So today we're going to be looking at and talking about 6 different weather tools that meteorologists use to measure and study the weather. I have 4 of them. There's 2 that I don't have. So I will show them to you, and the kids in class will also be getting to look at them and touch them and feel them. You want to make sure you learn the names of these and what they measure. So let's start out by reviewing what is weather. And the definition of the word weather means the condition of the atmosphere in a place for a short period of time. So remember, the atmosphere is a layer of gases and the clouds that kind of surround the earth. It kind of acts as a blanket that keeps the earth warm. And that's what controls our weather. Everything that's happening up in the atmosphere affects our weather down here. So, in other words, weather just means what it's like outside. When we're describing the weather, we're describing what it's like outside. There are different parts to the weather. A lot of times people say weather just means if it's hot or cold. That's only one part of the weather. There are several different other parts, and altogether, these are the conditions of the atmosphere. There is temperature, like I just mentioned, whether it's hot or cold outside. Precipitation, we talked a little bit about this before Christmas break. Precipitation is water or ice that falls from the clouds, and it can be either rain, snow, sleet, or hail, depending on the temperature of the atmosphere and what else is going on up there. We have wind, which is just air that moves, and we're going to see what's up with that hair. We're going to see 2 tools that measure wind. One measures wind direction, so it tells us which way the wind is blowing from. And another tool that measures wind speed, which will tell us how fast the wind is blowing. Cloud cover, again, if it's sunny, partly cloudy, overcast. And then we have humidity, which is a measurement of how much water vapor is in the air. So, sometimes, especially in the summer, you walk outside and it just feels very kind of wet and sticky, like you're kind of walking through a swamp or something. That would mean that the humidity is high that day. There's a lot of water vapor in the air. And then days when it feels kind of drier and not so sticky, that would mean that there's low humidity. And then air pressure, which just means how heavy the air is. So, how do we measure the different parts of weather? Well, meteorologists, who are scientists that study the weather, they use different tools to measure the different parts of weather. Each tool works in a different way. So I told you we're going to be talking about 6 tools today. The first one, and probably the one you're the most familiar with, is called a thermometer. There's a picture of a thermometer. I have another thermometer right here. Thermometers can look very different. They don't all look the same. Some of them are round and kind of look like a clock. A thermometer is a tool that measures temperature again, how hot or cold it is. And when we're discussing weather specifically, temperature is referring to the outside air temperature. You can measure the temperature of lots of things, water, like in the bathtub to make sure it's not too hot. When you're cooking, you measure the temperature of your food to make sure it's cooked all the way. when you don't feel well and you go to the nurse and they put the thermometer in your mouth, they're measuring your body temperature. So we can measure the temperature of lots of things, but when we're talking about weather, we're specifically talking about the outside air temperature. So if you listen to the weather report and it says it's 62 degrees, they are talking about the outside air temperature. And it's important to know the temperature because that helps us know what we need to wear that day, right? All right, so that's a thermometer, measures temperature. Next, we have a wind vane, which I don't have one of, but it looks like this. Sometimes you see them on the top of like buildings or houses. Sometimes people have them in their yards. And this is a tool that measures wind direction, and it points towards the direction that the wind is blowing from. So you can't just say that it measures wind. You need to be specific and say that it measures wind direction, because we're going to see another tool in a minute that measures wind speed. So this does not measure wind speed. This just tells us where is the wind coming from. So right now in this picture, it looks like this little rooster is pointed, I don't know, it's hard to tell in the picture, but it looks like it's between south and east. So we would say that there's a southeast wind. That means the wind is blowing from the southeast. And that's important too, to know for certain activities. Pilots, people who fly planes and helicopters need to know where the wind is coming from so they can plan their takeoff and their landing. If you want to fly a kite that day, you would want to know where the wind is coming from. If you have certain outside activities planned, it would be important to know, where the wind is coming from that day. Wind vane measures wind direction. Next, we have a barometer. I have one right here. It looks like this. And a barometer is a tool that measures air pressure. So I told you before, air pressure means how heavy the air is. When you listen to a weather forecast, they might use words like high pressure and low pressure. High pressure is associated with nice weather. This would be called like a nice day if there's high pressure. Low pressure is associated with what we call bad weather, like a stormy kind of yucky day. And you can remember this, H for happy, nice weather, L for lousy weather, okay? Again, this is called a barometer, and it measures air pressure or how heavy the air is. All right, and then we have an anemometer. It looks like this. There's a picture of one too. And an anemometer is a tool that measures wind speed. So this is going to tell us how fast the wind is blowing. So what happens is the wind blows, it pushes this, and then this red line moves up and down. And there are numbers here that tell us how fast the wind is blowing. This is specifically, a classroom one, but meteorologists have digital ones, which when the wind blows and it spins, it will automatically send the information to, their computer so that they know the wind speed. So remember, anemometer, wind speed. Next, we have a rain gauge. Again, they can look different. Here's one. It looks like this. You stick this in the ground. And a rain gauge is a tool that measures the amount of precipitation that has fallen. So you stick this in the ground, and then when it rains or snows or sleets or hails, it will tell you if the rain comes up to, here, that means we got 1 inch of rain last night, okay? This one goes up to 5 inches. You can get bigger ones that measure more if you live in a place that, gets a lot of rain. And it's called a rain gauge, but it doesn't just measure rain. It can measure any type of precipitation. Like a couple weeks ago when it snowed and you were hearing on the news, we got 5 inches of snow. The reason they know that is by using a rain gauge. All right. And then the last tool, which I do not have, is called a hygrometer, which may be a word you haven't heard before. A hygrometer is a tool that measures humidity. So I'm going to give you a way to remember this. Hygrometer and humidity both start with an H. Also, the prefix hygro refers to water. And I told you that humidity is a measurement of the amount of water vapor in the air. So again, I don't have one, but it looks like this right here. And it tells you the percent humidity. So like if you listen to the weather report, they will say, 60% humidity, which means how much water vapor is in the air. And again, when you walk outside in the middle of the summer, the humidity is usually very high. It's very sticky. Just your clothes stick to you. It kind of feels like you're walking through a swamp or something. And then when it feels drier, that would mean there's low humidity. All right, so those are the 6 weather tools we are learning about. The students that are in class will be completing a little notes page that has pictures of these where they will write the name and what they do. They'll also be completing a card sort. So they'll have cards with the names of the tools and what they measure, and they'll have to match them up. Remember, there is a short quiz in Schoology about weather tools. It's not for a grade. It's just to see what you learned and what you know. I hope that you had fun looking at the weather tools, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.